Next day of painting. So yesterday I got to paint with somebody else. That was a fun experience. I use internet for making a social. But I did get most of the inside of this thing done. So it's kind of hard to see in the light that I have. I do have a big old gigantic desk lamp that I pulled out of storage. I turn this thing on, it's bright as the sun. And maybe you can see a little better under there what I was going for. Kind of the purple on the inside and on the backs of the cannons and all that kind of stuff. But I think it's kind of annoying, honestly, so I'm going to leave it off while I paint more. I might actually broaden out, turn it on just to show. So I'm looking at this more now that the cans are actually in place, and my idea was have a shadow cast along here, have a shadow cast along here, have this light spilling out on either side. Problem is, as I look at it more, things like these faces would really get around most of these cannons in the light. So I don't mind not having these sides of the cannons painted, but I think I'm going to have to add a little bit more spread on the deck there in a lighter tone like this purple. Maybe water it down quite a bit and use a very little bit of paint on it. But that way it doesn't kind of look quite so... I'm going to leave the light on just for a little bit here. Probably a bit too much on the brush. There we go. I just want to get the tops. I don't want to have it settling down into the crevices like that. Just kind of blend in some of this. What? You're fine, buddy. A little bit. Side.
Daddy, what are you doing?
I'm painting.
Okay.
Go to bed. All right.
I knew you were gonna say that.
Yeah. Kids. All right, so you just widen that out a little bit to kind of show that there are other closer things up there that would be glowing down onto this. I don't like how some of it fell down into the cracks here. I'll pick some of that up as much as I can before it dries. Alright, so now I just had to spill out a little further to kind of show that the soles would go on there. So now I gotta get underneath the boat, things like that. Start layering up the next colors of magenta and then the pinks. Shouldn't take too long on the front there. Again, there's not many people gonna see under this thing. Looks like maybe I missed to get purple on one of these, but we'll just cover that up with some magenta anyway. But the whole thing's gonna be glowing, so it's not like the underside of the deck would be darker. It will be because there won't be any light reaching it, but I can't control that short of adding LEDs or whatever to the model, which is not something I'm gonna be doing. Some more magenta. Water down. Anyone has any questions or comments, make sure that if you saw this in one of the groups for painting or War Machine or whatever, that you click through to the actual video and post your comments or questions there. Otherwise, I won't be able to see them. also start getting a little bit of magenta on the ground around where the soul wave is. This is all going to get coated with a acrylic gel that kind of makes it look like a water effect. But this way it kind of looks like it's glowing through the water a bit, the way that I do it. So we'll just get some of the magenta going around the front where I can't hit it from the side, which will be a little easier later. Got a little right there, but that's fine. I'm going to retouch the base anyway. Just keep it thin. That's the key with glows and OSL and everything, is use thin paint. If you glob it on there, it's going to look like just a blotch of color and not like it's some kind of light shining through something else. Hard to get the brush at that angle, but I made the decision to put the model together before painting. So I live with it. The other thing I can do is put a little bit of the purple that I have on the underside of the deck and on the timbers where this is going to glow. So probably some back on this piece. I'm sure it is. I got a question if it was harder to paint as one piece, and everything's harder to paint as one piece in some ways, and in some ways it's easier. I think definitely technically it's harder to reach spots when it's being painted as one piece. There's no doubt about that. That's the main reason to paint things in multiple pieces, is to just get your brush in there a little easier. But I think the main downside to trying to paint in pieces is you don't get a good idea of how everything's going to go together, especially things like lighting and OSL, until everything is put together. Alright, so I got these soles right here and here. They wouldn't really do much on this around the corner. These here would definitely be glowing on them. And they're pretty close too, so I'm not going to just do purple on that. Let me get some magenta on here after this purple. Alright. I don't think anyone's going to be staring at the underside of this deck, so I'm not going to spend more than a couple minutes on it. But I might as well, just in case someone happens to look. Just a little bit of magenta and hit the closest edge here. Some of this close dock area down there. Might even get a little bit of pink on that because it's so close to the faces that are right here. Now the rest of this on the sides, I'll be able to hit a lot easier than from the front. So that's really as far as I'm going to go right now until I get to the sides. Mix up some more of my lighter pinks, which again I do about 3 drops of magenta to about 2 drops of white for the first one. This is just Reaper Magenta. So 3 to 2, maybe even like 3 to 3. The white tints the magenta down a little bit. When you go to the next level and it's mostly white, you want to do like 3 or 4 drops of white to 1 drop of magenta. Because it doesn't take a lot of magenta to put the white into a pink. It takes a little more of the white to bring down the magenta. Almost out of my white. I have to get this purple. And just water it. And again, thin the paint a lot when doing glows. I'm painting layers is really what I'm doing. People might be able to do a wet blend or a 2-brush blend or some crazy magic like that, but I just use layers and washes, and I can't wash a glow. Just put some of the pink on the wave itself. Start getting these faces built up with a lighter color. Not convinced this light is helping the video at all, but probably worse without it now. Still a lot of wet paint on these guys here. I kind of went thick with it. And I can use that to blend in that magenta a little more. Just dry off my brush a little on the outside here without wasting it. Get a little of that lighter magenta or dark pink on, use through here. Yep, purple as a base. I only really use purple in very, very large areas, otherwise I usually jump straight to magenta. And then I add just a little bit of white as I go until I almost get to a bright, bright, pure white. But I only use that in the actual glow sources, not on things that it's shining on. So I'm using that on the glow and not on the OSL for the areas that it's shining onto. I'm gonna grab my spare white because I think my other bottle's gone. I think this one's used, it feels empty. This one's got more, yay. I'm going to mix up my next color of white, which again is a bunch of white paint and a little tiny drop of magenta in it. Kind of show my palette here. Hold on, I'll move the camera. So purple, pure magenta, magenta with a bit of white, maybe about 3-2 mix, magenta to white. And then I have a very light pink, which is going to be mostly white with just like a drop of magenta. Might even be too much, but I think I'll be all right. And then the pure white at the end. Water that down, mix it up. Get all that white in there. Oh, that came out all right. Kind of a bright pink. I'm going to kind of hit the edge of the wave. Don't need a lot on the brush. It'll dry nice and thin. Just kind of get the ridges there, where it would be glowing a little brighter with a little more thickness of the soles, so to speak. Again, I don't know how many people are looking down here. I have not used it in a game. I'm still painting it. I don't mind playing with unpainted models. I try not to bring partially painted models to game nights. It's just without all of the layers of varnish and protection, I'm always afraid that something's going to rub off. And this one went straight from being assembled to being painted. So I didn't have much of a chance to use it without it being assembled. You can kind of see here it dried on real kind of thin, and it darkened down quite a bit. Still got wet paint on those skulls. It's fine, I'll use it to blend in. I don't personally. I'm the only one I know. Well, I think Travis has one, but I haven't seen him break it out at the paint table or the game table, so I don't know if he's put it together yet. So I'm lightening up the outside. I'm trying not to get too much into the actual eye socket. I think I kind of screwed up a little bit on that one there, but whatever. People aren't going to see that under there. I don't really know what I'm going for other than a glow. Alright, so now I'm just going to grab a little bit of my pure white with no purple at all. I'm just going to touch around the outside of the skulls to kind of bring them forefront in the color and brightness. Again, I'm getting some on the front lip, but that all gets repainted anyway. Trying to be careful not to get this down into the spaces and crevices. Don't have a ton on my brush. That's the key. If you have a whole bunch on there, you really load it up and touch it when it's that thin, it'll just run everywhere. Don't need a lot on the brush to put it on the model. Alright, and that's pretty good. Now I got the whole wave kind of blending down through the whole thing, top to bottom, through the ship. And I can start it on the sides. So first, starting out, kind of like a purple taffy kind of look. I'm gonna actually turn this light off. I'm gonna let this camera adjust to the normal ambient room lighting, now that I'm not trying to see underneath that. It's gonna be a little less harsh on the eyes anyway. Fairly heavy with the purple again, the magenta rather. Might as well get this little exhaust port up here while I'm at it. So I think it'd be brighter at the top. So I'm just gonna make sure I don't have too much of the brush there. Lay that in, leaving the very bottom tips purple. Getting all those windows is going to be fun because I'll have to be really careful not to paint over all of the kind of, I don't know what it's called, but the metal parts between stained glass. Maybe people just call it the metal parts between stained glass. If you get some on the outside before it dries, just the water in the brush, wipe that off. Back to the wave. I could go around the whole model and get all the magenta done at once. It might be slightly faster, slightly more efficient, but maybe more fun to stream if I'm doing it in pieces. These wave here would probably be shining up on the outside of that boat just a little bit. So I'll get some magenta on that too. Since the faces are right there, I might even bring it up to the pink. Purple also acts like a pretty good base coat to not have to do a million layers of this magenta just to get it to be visible through the black. A couple layers of purple, and then you can just do a couple layers of magenta, and then you're pretty much there. I'll get some of the ground around it. It's kind of again showing this is more the OSL. Painting on that sandpaper texture is awesome on the durability of my brush, I'm sure, but I want to break out like a different brush just for this. I can get this done now. So just kind of getting the ground all the way around it. Knocking over the camera. Yeah. Pro streaming right there. Get a little bit of my next color, slightly off magenta. I can hit it while it's a little wet yet. It'll just help it blend it in a little more. Just being careful not to put too much on or else it's going to take forever to dry. I can go a little bit around here. Kind of building up the first layer of the lighter magenta or darker pink. Get a little bit on that boat there where that would shine. A little bit around on the base. Then I'm going to move on to the back a little bit because that's pretty wet. I want to let that dry before doing my next layer. I already got my purples down. Start getting the magentas. This will be a pretty visible area through here, at least in the very back. Anytime you're looking at the back of the model, which is where, as a player, I'm going to be staring most of my time anyway. And just keep building up large areas of thin paints. Get around the base, the ground. Not be surprised if I use up the rest of that bottle of magenta on this project. There's a lot of things to make glow. Every time you see me pulling her out of the frame, I'm actually just reloading my brush. Try not to put too much paint on the brush at any given time, so it tends to be used up fairly quickly. Just creep up on here a little bit from the stuff. Be careful, because I don't want to get any of this back here. None of this would really be hitting it for the light. Be creeping up a little bit onto the face of it there. I also don't want to make it look like it was an accident, so I'll have to put a little bit of pink on it, at least the first shade. Otherwise it'll look like I just splashed it up there accidentally. That first shade of pink will at least make it look intentional. Probably gonna have some glowing to do up in there, some OSL. I'm just gonna start with the magenta rather than start with the purple. Just add a little bit of this up through here. The inside of this kind of gets a bit of a glow too from all this soul light reflecting on it. Honestly, I think there's some unprimed and unpainted resin in there, but that's one of the other benefits about putting things together first. No one's going to be looking way deep in the model like that with a freaking scope. So that's less paint that I have to put on the model. Ship, not a lot. It's not really it's kind of parallel to the wave, not perpendicular to where the light would shine on it. All right, back to the other side. The paint started to dry. I got my first layer of lighter magenta. Now I want to go to my next, which is more of a pink. Start layering that on. Okay. Nice and thin. Just a little light right there. Right? Nope. All right. Take a little break. Probably come back on in about 15-20 minutes or so. Keep going. So we'll see you then.